Welcome everyone. I am so glad to be here and excited to see your interest in this event. And you've received valuable information throughout the years. How many of the, well, put your fingers up, how many of the mini medical annual sessions have you been to? All of them. Whoa, 10? Oh my goodness. Okay. So you've received very valuable information throughout the years on the what and the why. So I'm here to tell you the how. Like, how does this translate into day-to-day changes? Okay. And so this is an offshoot of the Get Your Plate in Shape class. We have a virtual classes at Kaiser. So I hope you'll be able to use some of the practical everyday tools. Now, and I hope some of it will be new or reminders of tools that you can be using. And if you're doing everything right, kudos to you. Oh, they gave me 2 in-services on how to advance. And then I misclicked. Okay, so you should have received this in your packet. It is just a kind of a nutrition survey to kind of help you identify areas for change. It's not a perfect tool, but at least you can answer the question or ask yourself the question, answer the question. How many of you did this as homework? I didn't officially assign it as homework. Okay, only a couple. So you can be answering as we go along. I know they love giving homework here, okay? So if you do this behavior all the time, you're going to answer 7. If you never do it, you're going to answer 1. And then anything in between, would be anywhere from 2 to 6, right? So, and they already gave me an introduction, but again, I want you to feel really excited about using food as medicine and again, learning new tools as we go along. Now, I work with a lifestyle team at Kaiser Permanente, so I hope you'll be able to garner support through your community, whether it be family members or church groups or things like that, and really spread the word about choosing nutritious foods and again to enhance health. So today we're going to talk about tools for evaluating eating. So depending on what your health goals are, the tools that you use are going to be very different. So we really emphasize that you need to individualize the approach for making changes, and in particular here, making changes for your diet. And again, I realize that some of you have already made a lot of changes. Learn how to enhance your nutrition and also making a plan for change. Now, how many of you have recently made changes in your diet? Give me a show of hands. Okay, all right. Some of you recent. Okay, what about, and how many of you, well, so for those who have not made changes, maybe you're thinking of making changes. How many of you are thinking of making changes? Okay. There's not too many, for the online people, there's not too many hands going up. Okay, what I find, and I've been working for over 35 years, is that oftentimes people set goals that are not realistic for this point in time. And that's a big barrier. That's a big barrier for people. And so part of this session is really setting a goal that's right for you. And it doesn't have to be a diet goal. Okay, so I know there are sessions on exercise and, stress management. So it could be goals based on other lifestyle factors as well. It could be sleep. So just keep that in mind. And then we'll have summary and questions. So before we start, ask yourself the why, right? When it comes to making changes, whether it be diet or anything else, knowing the why is super important, because how easy is it to make changes? How many of you say it's easy to make changes? Give me a show of hands. Okay, nobody says it's easy. Two people say it's easy. Yeah, it's not easy. So knowing the why is very important. It helps you stay motivated, helps you to kind of get back on track when you're off track. So again, ask yourself the why. What are the reasons why you want to make changes, okay, or thinking of making the change? So I'm sure you've heard this, we are what we eat. And, you know, what we want you to do is really eat for health. I mean, yeah, eat for enjoyment as well, but definitely eat for health. And one of the things we talk a lot about in our classes is inflammation. And so just think of what inflammation means to you. Okay? So a lot of people say pain, swelling, and so, you know, basically, inflammation is like is a reaction to injury, and in the short term, it's helpful, right? Because it helps with healing. In the long term, though, it can cause, you know, ongoing damage to cells. And so, with dietary and lifestyle changes, all of this helps to reduce inflammation. So that's kind of the goal. Like I said, we talk about this a lot in our classes. And then emerging studies, you know, have shown that making changes in the diet can also change the way your genes respond. So you may have the diabetes gene, you may have the cancer gene, but positive lifestyle changes can either suppress the gene or negative lifestyle changes can turn on the gene, okay? So just kind of keep that in mind when you're looking at all of these medical conditions that you may be interested in improving. So kind of interesting here on the brain health. And I'm not sure, Dr. Hinshaw might have talked about this in her microbiome talks, but you know, like 70% of your immune system lives in the gut. So that's why that's so important. I think that's the next slide though. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the gut microbiome. So again, trillions of bacteria in your gut, 10 times more than the rest of your body. And so think about how beneficial bacteria works in your body. And again, how many of you saw Dr. Hinshaw's presentation on the microbiome? Okay, about a third of you, all right. And it's, again, online, so you can go back, and she has two of them, you know, in the links. So think about some of the benefits. And you can write it down, like write it down in your booklet, you know, as we go along, making notes. Actually, I kind of gave you the answer in your notes. But basically, they help to decrease inflammation, helps with digestion, boosts the immune system, and again, 70% of the immune system lives in the gut. You know, protects you from toxins, and a whole lot of other things, including production of vitamins and minerals and enzymes, etc. So with regard to brain health, we know that the serotonin as well as dopamine is also produced in the gut, quite a large percentage of it. And so that's why there's that strong connection between the gut health and brain health. So what's an easy way to help the beneficial bacteria or the microbiome? So this is a quote. How many of you are familiar with this quote from Michael Pollan? Okay, about a third of you. So Michael Pollan is a food journalist and an activist, and he says, eat food, so real food, whole foods, you know, less processed, none of the ultra-processed foods. not too much. So again, fueling your body in the right way and not over-fueling it, and mostly plants, right? So if it's a plant, eat it. If it's made in a plant, don't eat it. That's basically what he's saying, okay? And so many studies have shown the benefits of eating more plant-based. So this is an Adventist health study and over 60,000 participants. And what they found was as people started transitioning to a more plant-based diet, BMI, so BMI is body mass index, it's a measure of healthy weight. BMI starts to go down, as well as the prevalence of diabetes. Okay, so I think the good news about this study is that you don't necessarily have to go to a total vegan diet if you're not ready or have some other health condition that, may make it difficult for you to. So again, just making the baby steps. So the red bar is a SAD, standard American diet. And then if you get rid of the meat and the pork, the four-legged animals, that goes to the orange bar. And then if you get rid of the two-legged animals, then that's the brown. And then lacto-ovo is the green bar, where you're eating animal products, but not the animals themselves. Okay, so again, we're not asking everyone to get to a vegan diet. The whole idea is to really look at your plate and, what percentage of your plate should be from plants. Think about that. What percentage of your plate should come from plants? So let's go ahead and look into your the activity scores. Just a couple of you did it, so you can be answering as we go along, the rest of you. And so we ask yourselves, do you eat, or ask yourselves, do you eat 2 meals or more a day? And, it's kind of scheduled, somewhat scheduled meals. We don't want you eating haphazardly because, again, you're not going to get the nutrition you need, or vitamins and minerals. It may affect your metabolism. Some studies have shown that breakfast eaters actually had lower risk for cardiovascular disease. So, and then with regard to, I have a lot of people who come in and they're like gung-ho, they wake up at 4 a.m. and then they're going for their walk, an hour walk, and then they're 20 minutes waits, and they haven't fueled their body before the exercise. So oftentimes I'm counseling them to, hey, let's get some fuel in your body before you go ahead and exercise. So again, just fueling your body the way it needs to be fueled is looking at, again, your meal timing. Some of you, don't get hungry. Some of you may need 5 or 6 meals a day, so it's very individualized, depending on what you're trying to do with your weight and your nutrition, as well as your health goals. So let's look at that question number 2. Are you meal planning? Like, are you actually, thinking ahead of the day, maybe a day ahead, maybe a week ahead, and asking yourself, okay, what am I going to eat this week? And then shopping for those nutritious foods. I mean, these are simple things, but it's not always easy to do, right? Think of some of the barriers. Are there barriers that you have for the meal planning, the shopping? Everybody has kind of a different lifestyle, different family situations, but again, think about the behavior itself, because people will also often come to me and say, oh yeah, I don't know what to eat. So again, sitting down and looking at, planning the meals does help, okay? So of course that can help with better nutrition, less junk food coming in because you're not just grabbing and going. And again, there are, up to 2,000 different, microbiome. And so the more variety of foods you have in your diet, the more stable those microbiome are going to be. Okay, so we have 5 a day. Anybody know what 5 a day is? 5 a day? Yeah, okay. So minimum, the recommendation is minimum 2 fruits and 3 vegetables. Okay, so think about yesterday. How many of you are doing a food log or kind of tracking what you eat? 1. Okay, it's a very important tool or a very helpful tool, whether it be, writing it down, whether it be taking a picture, because it really can help you identify areas for change, and then it can help you prioritize areas for change. So we do have a sample food log in your booklet, and I'll show it a little bit later. So 5 a day helps to promote the right amount of fiber, and that's the minimum amount of fruit and vegetable that we recommend. And then, of course, whole grains. So the question is, are half of your grains whole? I would like 80% or more, or even 100%, but, ask yourself that question. So not just whole grains like oatmeal and brown rice and barley, quinoa, but also things like the whole starches. So you can count corn, potato, peas, things that come from the ground, aren't processed, as a whole starch. And then the other question is, do you eat beans or legumes or lentils weekly? Okay, so if you only have beans or lentils maybe twice a month, then that's not weekly. Your score on that sheet will be a 1. If you have beans at least once a week, you can go ahead and score yourself a 7. But kind of think about what you're doing. And you can imagine it's really hard to track that if you're not really paying attention. How many of you do remember what you ate yesterday? Show me a raise of hands. Okay, like less than a third, maybe a quarter of you. Yeah, it's really hard to remember. So again, keeping that food log. And that's what we do, when we counsel our members. We're like, can you give us a food log? Versus trying to recall, what did I eat? What did I eat yesterday? Okay. So in studies where they compared the highest amount of fiber versus lowest amount of fiber, they found that the deaths from cardiovascular disease were decreased, as well as cancer and other causes. So very potent, okay, as far as fiber. So back to the talking about biome. What is the main source of fuel for your beneficial bacteria? Oh, somebody said carbohydrates, I heard. What kind of carbohydrates? Okay, good guesses, guys. All right, so it's really fiber. So fiber is the non-digestible part of the food, the plant food, or we can call them resistant starches as well. And those are considered the prebiotics, okay? And they're the fuel for the gut bacteria. And how many of you take probiotics? Give me a show of hands. Oh, yeah, okay. Well, yeah, I was talking about the supplement. But how many of you take actual probiotic pills? Okay, just not too many, and then a couple might have, the foods with probiotics. So the probiotics can actually introduce the microbiome in your gut, but it's not sustainable. They're not sustainable unless you are having the fiber. So you really need that fiber in your diet. Anybody heard of postbiotics? No postbiotics? Okay. So postbiotics refers to the waste left after digestion and of the pre and the postbiotics. So these healthy postbiotics are the ones that help with the health benefits, okay? Whether it be the mood or the hormones and things like that. So again, fiber's the key. So let's take a look at yesterday's intake, your food intake. Did you have at least two fruits a day? Okay, so a serving is a small apple or maybe an apple banana, a small banana. If you had a large apple, that can count as 2 servings, the minimum 2 servings, and then the large banana can count as 2 servings. And then I just like to use the tennis ball, the size of a tennis ball for a serving size, a comparable serving size for fruit. If you look at vegetables, I like to use the fist. So everybody hold up your fists. Did you have at least 3 fists of vegetables yesterday? Okay, so I see some people nodding. All right, that's great. And the question is, how consistent are you? Okay. So in your packet, you do have the healthy plate shopping list. We have the first column, which has the whole grains and starches, which includes the starchy vegetable. And again, those are the ones that are going to give you the fiber. So again, fiber only comes from plant foods. Nothing from animal has fiber. Meat, milk, fish, eggs, cheese have 0 fiber. So again, you want the whole grain as much as possible. And then, of course, the second column with the fruits and vegetables, that's, all fiber. And we'll talk about eating the rainbow in a little while. And then the lean protein, which is the third column, the first 2 categories are the plant proteins, so the beans, the legumes, things like that. And then some of the soy foods are also high in fiber. So those are the ones that you want to focus on if you're trying to get fiber. And then the last column are the healthy fats, so the unprocessed foods like the nuts and seeds and avocado are going to give you fiber. The oils, the processed oils, are not going to give you any fiber. Okay, so this can be used as a shopping list if you feel it might be helpful. And choosing shopping, 80% of the time off of this list or more. If you can do 90% or 95%, that's even better. So again, hopefully this is a good shopping list to follow. All right, how else do we get fiber? So what was how much of your plate should be come from plant? What was your guess, or what was your... Yeah, so this, if you look at this, it's like 75%, right? 75% comes from plants. So again, this is a very visual tool that you can use. And again, compare your plate. If your plate looks like this in general, great job, keep it up. Okay, so a quarter of the plate, the protein, and again, you can use the size of the palm of your hand, thickness of your little finger for the protein food like fish or seafood or a lean meat if you are eating meat. If you're eating vegetable protein, again, that promotes more fiber. Again, you might need, I would say at least a fist or more, like pile it on that quarter of the plate. Yeah. And then the quarter of the plate or your fists, you can use your fists as a guide of whole grain or starchy vegetables, and then half a plate of vegetables. Now, some individuals, may need more calories, or they're maybe trying to control their blood sugars. So then we say, okay, this one's good for the blood sugar, the half a plate of non-starchy vegetable. If you're trying to gain weight, then I would say you could do the quarter of the plate vegetable, the quarter of the plate fruit. But again, it has to be individualized. And so many ways to have a healthy plate. So I want you to think about your last takeout meal. What was your last takeout meal? Or if you went to a restaurant, did that look like a healthy plate? It's often hard to, follow this format when you're going out. But when you're doing takeout, you can definitely, bring it home and then enhance it with vegetables or whatnot. When you're going out, you might make up for maybe the fiber or the vegetables a little bit later. Okay, so little things that you can do. But these can all be samples of healthy plates. So you learned that fiber, of course, boosts the beneficial bacteria. What foods actually destroys that bacteria? The SOS foods. All right, so in your notes, it does state the sugars or the processed carbs. So again, the processed carbs are all the low fiber carbs, the white rice, the white bread, the white pasta, the oils, so saturated fat, which can increase your LDL, can increase insulin resistance, and are high in calories. And then the trans fats or the hydrogenated oils. Okay, so those are the ones you really want to strictly limit or avoid. And salts or sodium. Okay, these are the foods that will destroy good bacteria in your gut. So it doesn't mean you can't have it at all, right? It just means, okay, monitor the frequency, maybe modify the portions, half your dessert with someone. I remember I went out with someone and I asked them, can I split your dessert? And she just looked at me like, Anyway, it didn't. She wasn't ready to split the dessert. So, okay. All right. In one of your questions, it's asked, do you limit sodium? Sodium is hard because there are so many hidden sources of sodium. And it's also confusing because when people see or they're looking at the label, oh, I don't have the cheese puff label. You guys got the cheese puff label that you got for snack? When you're looking at the label and it says like 230 milligrams of sodium, people just get really, freaked out. And so, but remember you have a budget. Okay, so a low sodium diet is about 1,500 milligrams. That's pretty low. But so I'm going to say anywhere from 15 to 2,300 milligrams a day. So if you just split that up in 3 meals, that might be 500 milligrams per meal. So then it gives you a little bit more leeway, gives you a little more, you're just not as, freaked out about the 125 milligrams on the label. So again, these are the high sodium seasonings. You do want to be cautious of these. And of course, there are so many other things that you can use. I don't know, think about a new product that you've found? Any new product, low sodium product that you've found? Any low sodium recipe? Yeah, I wish we could share all that like on, in the chat. But anyway, and then your herbs and spices are also, antibacterial, are antioxidants, so use as much of those, as possible. I don't know how many are actually, cooking meals at home. How many of you? So good. Oh, that's over 60%. And so if you go to down to earth and you want to, try new spices, you can just buy them in bulk. You can just get a teaspoon of a new herb or spice and then not have to buy the whole jar. So that's a good place to go, or maybe split it with somebody. Okay, the next question on your worksheet was, do you limit high-fat foods and high-sugar foods? Right? So, and again, for those of you who are already doing that, great. For those of you who are taking steps to slowly make substitutions, congratulations. So these are just some substitutions, of course. Instead of the high sugar cereals, have the oatmeal. I added some sweet potato in there, as well as, I think that was pineapple. This is my new favorite, Thai toast. So whole grain bread, with 3 grams of fiber. I look for 3 grams of fiber in my bread or crackers, things like that. That's part of your homework. So look at your bread and crackers or cereals and look for at least 3 grams of fiber per serving. And so my Thai toast has the natural nut butter with no hydrogenated oils. Oh, that's another homework. Check your peanut butter label and make sure that it does not contain hydrogenated oils, since that's equates to trans fats. And then I have fresh basil and then a little bit of sriracha sauce. So it's really good. So anyway, these are just some of the substitutions. So think about a substitution that you have made recently or plan to make. Again, this kind of ties into the first question about, have you made any recent changes? So I don't know if that's relevant to you right now. Okay. All right. Second to the last question talks about alcohol. So the moderate drinking recommendation is still no more than 2 drinks a day for men and no more than 1 for women. And you can see the serving sizes listed. But even with moderate drinking, there are risks. We do know that even a little bit of alcohol can increase inflammation. Definitely for people with history of cancer, I try to have them avoid it completely. And studies have shown that with cancer, certain types of cancer, especially esophageal, there's no safe level. And then even 1 drink, puts you at risk for other types of cancer. So again, that's a big one. And then even the low amount of alcohol can increase the risk for dementia. So I think take a look at your own personal medical history and then decide, is this something that is helping me or is this something that I can do without? And if you look at the calories, if you take in 1 drink a day, that's 100 extra calories a day. So let's look at not just alcohol, but other foods. So, piece of chocolate, 100 calories worth of chocolate, or whatever that might be. If you're taking 100 extra calories a day and you're not burning it off, you could gain like 10 pounds in a week. Sorry, not a week, a year, okay? A year. All right, I know, your eyes got really big. Okay. And so that may be a concern for some of you. The very last question has to do with hunger fullness scale, and here's the sample food diary that you have in your packet. Go ahead and make copies, start jotting down what you eat, if, again, you're interested in making changes. And so what you can do is record what you're eating or the meal time, how much, and if you don't know, measurements through cups and ounces and things like that, you can use your fists, as a guide, or your palm or thumb or tip of your little finger. And probably more important than calories would be the fiber. So I would actually track fiber. I have many of my patients track their fiber intake, because if you're getting enough fiber in your diet, you're most likely, not all the time, but most likely you're eating the right types of foods. So that's a really good indicator, okay? And so with regard to the hunger rating, what this tool does is has you rate how hungry you are before you're eating and then how you feel after you're eating. So any meal or snack. And so this kind of looks at have you guys heard like the mindless eating? And you don't have to raise your hand. How many of you like go to the refrigerator and like, ooh, what's to eat? And then, sit down and then, ooh, 30 minutes later, go to the kitchen counter. Oh, ooh, what's to eat, right? It's just that kind of like, why am I eating? So that's this tool can help you look at, triggers for eating. So again, if you're trying to, limit calories because you're trying to improve your weight, or you're trying to limit carbs because, you're trying to control blood sugar or fats because of cholesterol or sodium, this can be a really good tool, because oftentimes our cravings, and what I call cravings is head hunger, our cravings have nothing to do with eating broccoli, right? Or kale, right? So when you're craving foods, you're craving for the high fat, the high salt, the high sugar foods. So to minimize those types of foods, think about, what is it that, am I hungry? So this is the hunger fullness scale. And so a good time to eat, or what we say physical hunger, is when you're, between a 3 and a 4. A good time to stop for most people now, okay? So if you need to gain weight, that's going to be different. You're going to have to eat even if you're not hungry, right? But for those who know that, I really don't need to be eating this, or I should be eating something healthier, stopping at maybe 5 or 6, no more than 7, is a good place to be. So thinking, am I hungry? Why am I eating? Maybe it's an emotion. Maybe it's, like I said, just a craving. And then stopping when you're feeling just satisfied. So again, differentiating between head hunger and stomach hunger, because, there's all kinds of triggers to eating. And like I said, you don't get cravings for the healthy food. So this is a tool that you can use when you're recognizing that you have head hunger. So I have people write down all kinds of different things that you can do that do not involve eating, and I tell them, make it nurturing. It could be a mini facial. Even men, you can do a mini facial. You can do a lomi, hand lomi. You can organize your sock drawer. You can, clean the toilet. I mean, any activity that will take you away from eating. And when you recognize that it's a head hunger, go ahead and pick up one of those slips of papers with all your non-food activities, and then, that's going to break that cycle where you're thinking, food, I'm going to eat, food, I'm going to eat. So this is one of my, favorite tools. Okay, now you're going to be analyzing your dinner from last night. And it's a good memory test, too. So can you remember what you ate for dinner last night? How many of you can remember? Oh, I got only half. Okay, the rest of you are going to have to make it up. But again, if you don't remember specifically what you ate, think about what you might usually eat, okay? So the Eat with the Stars activity has you give yourself a star for each food group that you had at your meal, okay? So we're going to start with a lean protein. So we mentioned that, saturated fat and cholesterol can increase cholesterol, increase insulin resistance. So we want to choose the lean proteins sources. So if you had a lean protein source, give yourself a star. So it could be tofu, could be beans, could be, chicken, skinless chicken, could be fish, could be seafood like shrimp, except it can't be tempura style. Okay, so give yourself a star if that was if you had a lean protein with your dinner. The next 5 categories have to do with the colors of the rainbow. So you learned about the 5 a day, right? 2 fruits and 3 vegetables. But now you want to see how many colors you get with the meal, how many plant colors. So, each plant color gives you a polyphenol that are either antioxidants, anti-inflammatory, or anti-infection. So they're chemicals in foods that are not necessarily nutrients, and so that's the reason why you want the different colors in your diet. All right, so think about this. Did you have a red fruit or vegetable? Okay, not jelly beans, but red fruit and vegetables. So give yourself a star if you did. And then blue and purple. So blue and purple delays cellular aging. Yeah, that's what we want. Orange and yellow can keep your eyes and skin healthy and actually helps with intracellular communication. Green can help with eye health. There's lots of greens, and those, I think all fruits and vegetables are anti-carcinogenic, but they mainly say that for the green. And seaweed, you'll notice seaweed is on there, so if you have nori, that can count as a green. And then lastly, white. So did you have a white color fruit or vegetable, which would be onions, which could be the chop suey yam or jicama, bananas, since we don't eat the skin, cauliflower. Okay, so count up. I mean, I recommend having at least one, if not two, colors per meal. And again, for those of you who are already doing this, great, continue. Definitely on the right track. Second to the last category are the grains and starches, the whole grains and starches that we spoke about. So did you have a whole grain and starch? Okay, so brown rice or quinoa, and then the whole starch or starchy vegetables would be things like taro, poi, ulu or breadfruit, sweet potato. And very last would be the healthy fats. So did you have a healthy fat? So in general, if you did have fish, we just said, okay, you had, even if it wasn't a fatty fish, we're just going to count it in this activity, okay? So it could be salmon, of course, could be mackerel, white albacore tuna, and so those omega fatty acids can help to decrease LDL and decrease risk for heart disease or stroke. And then also the omega-3 fatty acids, which again are found in the fish, can also be found in your plant sources. So your flax or chia. How many of you are using flax or chia seeds? One, okay. All right. So maybe 15 of you, okay. Hemp seeds, even soybeans have, omega fatty acids. So are you getting a healthy fat in your meal? All right, you can count up your stars. And this just happened to be a 7-star meal. I'm not sure where I got it from, but something from home. 7 different stars. So again, if you're getting 4 stars or more, great. If you didn't have 4 stars, just build up on that. So this is a good, way to rate your eating and figure out whether this is something you want to work on. But it's also a good way to meal plan. So it's probably more helpful if you do this before you eat it. Make sure you have at least 4 stars before you do the meal prep. All right, so that was Eat with the Stars. So just looking at the tools, is there any one tool that might be helpful for you moving forward? We got the healthy plate, we got the hunger fullness scale, maybe using a food log, the Eat with the Stars. Let me go back to, is there any, let's think about that. If there was one thing that might be helpful, or 1 or 2 things that you might want to use moving forward. In your packet, we also have healthy plate meal samples. We have a Mediterranean-style localized meal samples as well as plant-based meal samples. So I hope that helps with meal planning going forward. So just basically, the bottom line is CRAP, right? Okay, and then there are other benefits too, moving more plant-based, eating less of the animal protein. All right, so we do have resources listed in your packet, so feel free to access them. And then we have 1 minute, or maybe to go ahead and set a goal. So I want you to think about maybe the questions you answered on the Get Your Plate activity sheet. So if you answered 4 or less on any of those, choose one that you'd like to work on. And the really important thing about goal setting is making sure that it's important to you, not to anybody else, not even to your doctor. And on a scale of 1 to 10, you need to be 7 or higher on that scale in terms of importance. Also, once you decide, yep, this is important enough, ask yourself, how ready are you? And again, same scale. You need to be 7 or higher. You can't be any lower than a 7. And then lastly, what's your confidence in doing it? Okay, so, and this is the important part about setting a goal. Make sure you set a goal that you know you can do versus something that you should do. What I say is everybody knows what they should do. So make sure you, again, set a goal that's realistic and achievable. And then we also say measurable, right? So if somebody says eat healthy, then that's a nice goal, but that's not necessarily, a specific enough action plan. So set a goal. How many fruits are you going to eat a day or a week? How many vegetables are you going to eat a day or a week? If I can get everyone who's not eating beans weekly to eat beans weekly, that would be really good after today. But anyway, all right? So these are I just want to let you know about our culinary medicine virtual class. It's open to members and non-members. So if you'd like to give us a call at this number, you can sign up for a virtual food demo with plant-based recipes. And then the other resources are for Kaiser members. All right, that's all I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Letty. That was incredibly informative. Any questions?
Poke bowl healthy.
So the question was, is poke bowl healthy? I mean, I think it's a lean protein. I wouldn't choose the one with mayo, the mayonnaise, right? So no spicy tuna, just because of the fat from the mayonnaise. And, again, this has to be individualized. When you're looking at the sodium, right, that would be high in a poke bowl. I think it would be dependent on, what your individual health goals are. So, for example, if you have a high sodium meal, in a poke bowl for one meal, but you've, pretty minimized, have minimal sodium in the other meals, you can use that budget that I gave. I mean, sometimes it's hard to calculate out the sodium, but that's the idea, is that you do have a budget for sodium or fat or other things. I don't know.
There's a comment about Dave's thin sliced high fiber whole grain bread is sold everywhere. I don't know if you recommend that.
Okay, so the question is, do I recommend Dave's bread? If you're looking at the 3 grams of fiber or more criteria, then it does meet the 3 grams of fiber or more criteria. There's another tool that you can use though. It's the 5-to-1 ratio. So, and this is kind of like level 2 in fiber, looking at fiber. So if you get the total carbs and you divide it by the grams of fiber, the ratio should be 5 or less. So for those of you who are already, choosing things that are high fiber, this is another tool that you can use. So if your bread has 15 grams of carbs and 3 grams of fiber, the ratios, I got to do the ratio. It's going to be 5. So that would be okay.
Okay.
Well, one thing is I noticed that many of us, as we age, we eat less quantity. And a health tip is when you go to events, take a little plastic bag and put it in your purse. because I'm called the scavenger because we usually can't eat the quantity that's served, but sometimes we feel compelled to. So it's good to do that, and it doesn't waste it. But I had a question about, I often eat popcorn for dinner. Where does it fit?
That's a whole grain. Yeah, so whole grain, I mean, all you've done is popped it. You haven't changed the form, and it is high in fiber. But, you know, are you getting the protein? Are you getting other things? So I would probably, you know, combine it with other things if possible. You don't have to do a food log for me.
What do you do when one is on a low fiber diet like FODMAP for certain gastrointestinal issues?
So the question's about FODMAP. I don't know how many of you have heard of FODMAP. It's so FODMAP is an acronym. I'm not going to list the carbohydrates, but there are 6 different carbohydrates that are difficult for your GI to digest. So for people who, that last speaker had the question about SIBO, but also IBS, things like that. Sometimes we try the low FODMAP diet. Now, low FODMAP is not actually low fiber because you can have oatmeal, you can have, actually the list for low FODMAP fruits and vegetables are bigger than the high FODMAP fruits and vegetables. So I don't think it's low fiber.
Okay, good, thank you.
My question is, why are there limits on the fruits and milk products? I mean, you have like 1 glass of milk and 2 servings of fruit. Is it because they're in fruits? I know a lot of them have a lot of sugar in them, and so are they better fruits than others for lower in the glycemic?
When you say limit on the fruits, is that?
Because I'm vegetarian, so they said you can eat as much vegetables as you want, but you have to limit the amount of fruits that you eat and also the amount of milk that you drink.
Yes, so I don't think we have a limit on the fruits, especially with a vegetarian diet. Are you talking about the 5 a day, the 2 fruits, 3 vegetables? Yeah, so 2 is the minimum amount of fruits we want you to have. That's the minimum.
But because I'm pre-diabetic, they said not to eat that much fruit. I mean, two servings of fruit, but we're not going overboard with fruits because it was a lot of sugar in. But if I eat berries, there's less sugar in the berries than there are in other fruits.
Yes, so again, for prediabetes or diabetes, for some people, they may have to limit the carbohydrates from fruits, but that's pretty individual. And I think that's like part of a, dietitian's job, and your job actually to do your food log, is to figure out, well, what are the carbohydrate, if you have prediabetes or diabetes, what other carbohydrate sources are you taking? How often? Looking at the amount. It's very individualized. And it also depends on your activity. So if someone's very active, they can definitely handle more carbs. So they could maybe eat up to, 4 fruits a day. So I'm not sure if that answered your question.
I'm worried about the sugar in the fruits more than the carbs. The sugar.
So again, that's a whole food.
Okay.
And so what we're more concerned with is added sugar. Okay, so that's not an added sugar. So I would definitely use fruits as much as possible.
And the limit on dairy, 1 glass of milk or 2 glasses or 5 glasses or whatever.
Are you talking about on like one of our handouts?
Yeah, on your handout.
Yeah, there's no limit on the dairy. I mean, there's the recommendation is maybe about 2 servings of dairy products, I think, and it's not dairy, it's like dairy or plant-based calcium fortified product. And I think if you kind of look at the overall picture, if an individual's drinking 5 cups of milk, what other foods are they not getting? So that's what I would look at, So I think as an average, we say 2 to 3 cups may be okay, but I would promote, skim milk or soy milk or something. And if it's a plant milk, you're going to make sure it has like 30% daily value for calcium. so that you're getting your calcium.
Thank you.
There's a comment over here about as to how much to eat. Hara Hachibu'u, I'm sure I'm not pronouncing that well. Eat until the stomach is 80% full. I think that's what the Okinawans follow. So that's a comment.
That's correct. How many of you have heard that? It kind of matches our scale.
Okay.
I have a question about when you talked about the legumes, you didn't mention peanuts. Do you consider that a legume? And if you eat peanuts regularly, can you do that instead of the lentils?
Good question. So, yeah, you're right. It's technically a legume, but the fiber content isn't as high as the other legumes and lentils. And it's quite high in calories. So in general, and again, we always try to individualize, in general, we keep that separate. Okay, because if you're on a plant-based diet, we would say try to get at least a cup and a half of legumes per meal, because if you're eating 3 ounces of meat, chicken, or fish, that has 21 grams of protein. And so a cup and a half of legumes or tofu would have the equivalent. But if you were eating a cup and a half of nuts, the caloric intake would be quite high. I mean, that's kind of how I would look at it. I don't know if you have a different comment.
What is your opinion on intermittent fasting? I normally have no dinner or a very small dinner.
Yeah, so we say eat when the sun's up, although that's hard in Alaska. But studies have shown that the 14-hour fast, minimum 14, can be helpful to decrease inflammation and improve blood sugar. And help with weight. So I generally will have people do all of these other things, right? Try the healthy plate, the food log, hunger fullness scale, and then of course all the other behavior goals like exercise and sleep and stress, and then monitor. And if they're able to do the 14-hour fast very easily, there's no harm in doing that. Some people, so 14-hour fast is a 10-hour eating window. And the studies have shown that the 6 to 10-hour eating window can be helpful. But, 6 hours is very limited. And within a 6-hour window, it's hard to get, the nutrition that you need. So I would rather people not, go to the 6-hour eating window. I would rather them try 10, then maybe 9, and then maybe 8. So those are some of the strategies that we do use.
Is it safe to eat like half a block of tofu daily?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't see a problem with there's a lot of, the articles on soy and breast cancer, and actually the studies have shown that soy can actually decrease, the cancer risk. So, and it's a different type of isoflavone that your body is dealing with.
There are a couple of questions here about different types of food. Is watermelon one of the good foods? And then are bamboo shoots and ogo high in potassium? So
watermelon, again, we try not to say good food, bad foods, right? But watermelon, with regard to, somebody mentioned prediabetes and diabetes, are somewhat like berries. So they're less carb dense, so they may be more beneficial. So anyway, that's my take on watermelon. And then ogo and what?
Ogo and bamboo shoots, are they high in potassium?
I would have to look. You go to hawaiifoods.hawaii.edu. That's the Cancer Center. They have a database of all the foods, local foods, and nutrition. So hawaii.hawaii.edu. And you can look it up. Any fruit or vegetable, good potassium sources. I think I get that question a lot when people have been diagnosed with chronic kidney disease, like whether it be 2, 3, level 2 or 3, and they're all of a sudden wanting to limit potassium. because they have chronic disease, because of what they hear on the, or read on the websites, on Dr. Google, okay? And so we say you only need to restrict potassium when your serum potassium levels are elevated. That's probably one of the biggest misconceptions that we have when, people are talking about potassium.
Can you comment on the gluten-free diet? Does that change anything that you've recommended today?
So I recommend a gluten-free diet for those who have like celiac disease. So that's definitely going to, help those who have been diagnosed with celiac disease. Gluten is actually one of the high FODMAP, one of the carbohydrates that are difficult to digest, that some people have difficulty digesting. So instead of starting with eliminating all of those carbohydrates, sometimes people will just try a gluten-free diet to see if their digestive issues, get better. And then the second one would be lactose or milk products. So they don't necessarily have to do the full elimination in order to see if, their symptoms are diet-related. But really, when you're having those types of issues and you think you have a intolerance, that food log is critical. Keeping the food log, keeping track of what you're eating and how much, the frequency, and then I have people track the degree of discomfort. So it takes a lot of work. It's not easy. But anyway, that's what I would recommend.
I've recently read that different kinds of saturated fats can have different effects depending on carbon chain length, and that not all of them are harmful.
So in Dr. Hinshaw, you can comment if you want, but we still kind of keep them in the same category. All the saturated fats, we feel, can still increase inflammation and insulin resistance.
Okay.
I'm having a hard time finding plant-based meat substitutions because a lot of them have a high content of fat or sugar or sodium, so the fake meats. Can you recommend any brand or anything that I can find that is lower in fats, sugars, sodium? Because the fake meat seems to be really high. I'm looking.
So you're talking about like plant-based,
right? Impossible burgers.
Oh yeah,
the rest of the stuff. They seem to be more unhealthy,
right,
than the protein that I'm eating. I live on tofu and beans.
So I would say if you're living on tofu and beans, stick with the tofu and beans. Truly. If you're fine with eating tofu and beans, there's no need, to find an artificial, an occasional. So if you're going to occasionally use an Impossible Burger, you just want a different flavor profile or something, that's fine. But if it's an everyday thing, just stick with the tofu and beans.
So do you have any recommendations on any brands? Because I stay in the supermarkets and I'm reading all the labels, right, for all these meat substitutes.
Sorry, I couldn't hear that.
I said I stand in the supermarkets reading all these labels, looking at the sodium, looking at the fat, looking at the sugar content, and I really can't find anything that is really
I haven't looked at the labels of the plant substitutes lately, but if you're going to be looking for something for a meal, the Heart Association says a lean meal has 4.5 grams of saturated fat or less. So maybe that could be used as a guideline if you're looking for a, plant sausage or whatever. And then sodium, I had mentioned 500 milligrams or less. So that might help if you're looking for a product.
I notice we're getting way over time, so we'll do one last question. Is adding protein powder to oatmeal okay? I get hungry by mid-morning when eating only oatmeal with fruit and a little bit of nuts. Concerned about the high calories.
So there may be different reasons why you add protein powder. I mean, I think it's good to know. So when you say, is it good or bad, it kind of depends on why you're doing it. Oh, I think they mentioned because they get hungry. So what I would do is maybe add ground flax, or maybe chia, for more fiber, kind of, or maybe a nut butter, maybe the natural peanut butter to increase satiety so you don't get as hungry. I mean, I wouldn't automatically go to the protein powders because, again, a lot of them do have artificial sweeteners, and there's all the different studies going on regarding artificial sweeteners with the impact on the gut. Also, artificial sweeteners could increase your cravings for sweets. So that could be, that might affect your eating other ways. So anyway, there's other ways that you can increase satiety.
Thank you so much, Letty.